Baltimore is one of the few major jurisdictions in the country where the police do the charging. New York City, other major districts, the DA does the charging, the state's attorney does the charging. Now, there are several questions in that realm I want to ask, but let me just start with this A part of it, and we get to the B after my callers come in. The A part is, that's something that people have argued should have changed a long time ago, that Pat Jessamine argued that should change a long time ago, that every police commissioner has opposed. And I want to hear your position on that. I mean, it seems to me that part of the problem in some of the court cases is part of the problem, not all the problem. Part of the problem is that the charging mechanism in the city is flawed, that police often make bad charges that can't stick, that they're not thought through the way a lawyer, a state's attorney, would think it through. Do you think that has to change?
Well, I think that to the extent that system may or may not be flawed, does not at all apply to the kind of cases that I'm talking about that we need to be more focused on. Because it's my belief that the reason why we are in a crisis in this city and have been for the last 15 years regarding the violence in the streets and the repeated violent felonies that are committed by the same people over and over again is because of an inability of the state's attorney's office to work cooperatively with the police department. Because what I'm talking about, Mark, is not locking up thousands of people. That's not what this is about at all. You can't do that. They tried that 10 years ago. I mean, it doesn't work. What I'm talking about is we know who the 500 or 600 bad guys are out there. I mean, we know that based on their records and their prior criminal history. And so when they get arrested on a new charge, then that's when you start to be strategic by working at the early stages with the police and the state's attorney's office to make sure that you're presenting that case in a way that you're going to get the conviction. And if you do that in those cases, you're not going to have an issue about who's making the charging decisions or not, because you're now working together in terms of coming up jointly with a decision about when to charge and what to charge. The other cases, the more routine ones, for lack of a better way to describe it, there's so many, I'd have to think further about whether the police should still charge those cases or not. But that's not really the problem with the system. The problem with the system is that in part, the state's attorney's office has just not been effective in prosecuting these more violent offenders.
We'll have more questions about that, but I promised the listeners I'll let them in. Greg Bernstein is our guest. Greg Bernstein, of course, is an attorney here in Baltimore with Zuckerman Spader, LLP. He's been a former federal prosecutor. He is challenging Pat Jessamine to become the next city state's attorney here in Baltimore City. 410-319-8888 is the number here to join in the conversation. Dan in Pigtown, you're on the air.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me on. The biggest problem we have is the state's attorney's office dropping charges, and I have to vehemently disagree with you, Mark. The police are arresting the right people. They're charging them with the right crimes over and over and over again. And we as a community association sit there and watch as Pat Jessamine, state's attorney's office, drops charges constantly and just sends these guys right back out on the street to deal their drugs, or if they're prostitutes, to continue fueling the drug trade, being prostitutes, and it's causing all kinds of havoc on our community. Prostitutes, about a year ago, went into vacant houses. They were burning them down. These are people that should be in jail. They should be prosecuted for what the police are charging them. The police are not the problem. It's the state's attorney's office.
And is there a question there besides the statement?
The question is, for Mr. Bernstein, would you more aggressively go after drug dealers and prostitutes? Would you drop as many charges as Pat Jessamine's doing?
The Washington Village Development Association, WVDA.